Bonjour, bienvenue au Théâtre national de la presse. Je m'appelle Denis Babin, je serai modérateur pour cette conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Avant de commencer, nous avons quelques mesures préventives importantes à communiquer pour prévenir les incidents acoustiques perturbateurs et potentiellement dangereux susceptibles de causer des blessures. Nous rappelons à tous les participants de garder leur oreillette éloignée de tous les microphones à tout moment. When you're not using your earpiece, please place it face down on the middle of the sticker for this purpose that you will find on the table. Please consult the cards on the table for guidelines to prevent audio feedback incidents. Ces mesures sont en place afin de protéger la santé et la sécurité de tous les participants, y compris les interprètes, et que nous puissions exercer nos activités sans interruption. Merci à tous pour votre coopération. For today's press conference, the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly calls on Parliament to uphold Canada's international climate commitments following the tabling of Budget 2025. Des membres de l'Assemblée, auxquels se joint entre autres la sénatrice Mary Coyle, rendent public aujourd'hui le rapport et les recommandations de l'Assemblée. Senator Coyle, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, bonjour, and welcome to all here in attendance. I'm Mary Coyle, a senator from Antigonish, Nova Scotia. Before we start, I want to ask you to join me in acknowledging that we're meeting today on the lands of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I'm joined today with three members of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly, Ajit Balasundram from Prince Edward Island, Hallie Robinson from Ontario, and Stéphanie Belzile from Alberta. I'm also joined by Jasmin Kay, the chair of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly, and Leticia Deawuo, executive director of Environmental Leadership Canada. We're here to discuss and celebrate the official launch of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly's report and recommendations for parliamentarians. I am co-chair of Senators for Climate Solutions with Senator Jim Quinn. We are a big tent group, modeled on the UK House of Lords Peers for the Planet Climate Organization. We bring together, inform, and support Canadian senators who want to find effective solutions to climate change. Our focus has been on equipping ourselves with evidence-based knowledge in order to better inform our roles as legislators. That's our main job. We have more than 60 members with representation from across the country and throughout the Senate chamber. Senators for Climate Solutions is proud to have played a role in convening the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly in collaboration with Environmental Leadership Canada and Mass LBP this past summer and fall. This report's recommendations come at an important time. Budget 2025 has just been released with an emphasis on training the next generation, building their skills, creating more jobs, and with massive investments in energy projects. Building a resilient future for our country is critical. Ensuring youth voices help shape policy that will impact their lives is imperative. That is why we're here today. You will hear more about those recommendations shortly from the youth directly. For some background, having convened virtually this summer and in Ottawa this September, the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly is the first national Canadian Citizens Assembly on climate, and it's the first of its kind in the world designed specifically for young adults. Over 5 days of meetings, September 21st to September 17th to the 21st, 33 young Canadians aged 18 to 25, representing every province, territory, and region of our country, were selected by civic lottery out of 700 applicants to reflect the country's diversity. They came together in Ottawa to find consensus on one of Canada's most vexing challenges. The Assembly came together to answer the question, what do young Canadians want Parliament to do to meet Canada's climate commitments in a way that reflects their values and their priorities? The Assembly culminated with participants presenting their recommendations to over 20 parliamentarians in the Senate of Canada on September 21st. An 11-member advisory and oversight committee collaborated with the project team to design a curriculum that provided participants with a baseline of information and exposed them to diverse perspectives across the political spectrum and with expertise in climate science and policy. The Assembly members focused on 3 specific themes: preparing for climate risks, reducing emissions in the oil and gas sector, and strengthening accountability for climate action. And now, to hear directly about those recommendations, I will turn it over to Ajit, Hallie, and Stephanie. I also want to thank you for your service to Canada. Over to you.
The Canadian Youth Climate Assembly consisted of 33 Canadians from all across the country, all from different regions and backgrounds, and have different perspectives and knowledge about climate change. During our time together, we had the opportunity to hear many knowledgeable panelists speak on various important topics on climate change. These speakers sparked conversation that helped us further our work on the final report. We were able to have deep and open discussions with what was essentially the youth of Canada in one room. Through 4 Zoom calls and 5 days together in Ottawa, we were able to develop a clear picture of what our generation, the ones who will be most affected by climate change, believes should be prioritized. We developed 7 principles and 6 priorities and our recommendations for preparing for climate risk, reducing emissions in oil and gas sector, and accountability. A review of the risks. When discussing of risk, we were able to create 6 different recommendations. 1, integrate climate risk assessment into national economic planning. 2, support in sustainable agricultural practices. 3, establish a national framework for emergency preparedness that improves coordination, resource allocation, and communication for disaster response. 4, expand access to climate-related mental health support with a focus on wellness and multi-modal access. 5, strengthen incentives that help communities to invest in deep retrofits and sustainable technologies. And 6, invest in sustainable and resilient infrastructure to prevent costly rebuilding when climate disasters hit. Here are 2 recommendations that I worked on that I would like to highlight. We urge parliamentarians to invest in the creation of a national standard and a federally led intergovernmental agency to ensure federal, provincial, territorial, local, and Indigenous governments and nations collaborate to maximize the efficiency of communication, resource allocation, and initiatives to prepare for and respond to emergencies and disasters. Now, this would link to the principle of collaboration and the priority of education and literacy and awareness that we highlighted in our priorities and principles. The second recommendation that I like to highlight is we urge parliamentarians to mandate and support the provision of continued and long-term mental health resources across provinces and territories so that all Canadians can access care from climate-induced trauma, distress, and duress. We want to see an emphasis on community wellness and making resources available virtually and in person to allow all Canadians to stay connected. Such resources include hotlines, call and text, for individuals struggling due to the effects of climate change, websites with related resources, and support groups where people can share their own experiences. Now, this would link to the preparedness, safety, and resilience priority that we have discussed.
I worked on the climate accountability section of the report, which is key for building trust and providing clarity as we take a long-term approach to climate solutions. I think it's very embedded in our priority of justice, equity, and Indigenous self-determination, as we must recognize that issues are systemic, interconnected, and shaped by historic and ongoing systems of oppression, including colonialism, capitalism, racism, and the patriarchy. It also very directly links to the principle of transparency, which means for us that parliamentarians are actively communicating the issues they're working on, including the processes, stakeholders, evidence, and reasoning in a way that is timely, clear, and accessible. This is important to foster confidence in democratic institutions and inform public participation in the political process based on common ground. I would like to highlight a few of our recommendations from this section. One of the ones that I worked on and am excited about, especially as a member of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly, is that we urge parliamentarians and the government to meaningfully engage youth early in decision-making processes in a demographically representative, low barrier, and inclusive manner. This will build policies that reflect the perspectives of young people living in Canada, reduce systemic barriers, and contribute to a resilient democracy. I'd also like to highlight, especially in regards to the theme of justice, equity, and Indigenous self-determination, our fifth recommendation, we urge parliamentarians to ensure that Indigenous nations are engaged equitably and have decision-making power throughout the development of all major projects in a manner consistent with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. This is important because the empowerment of Indigenous nations is climate action. And finally, I would like to highlight one more on disclosures. Our seventh recommendation of this section, we urge parliamentarians to require large corporations, high-emitting industries, and the public sector to disclose all their greenhouse gas emissions, Scope 1, 2, and 3, in a publicly accessible manner to increase transparency and accountability.
Thank you, Hallie. I helped work on the set of recommendations on reducing emissions in the oil and gas sector. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of those recommendations from the 9 that we created. So we urge parliamentarians to review existing regulations to ensure that the government reduces subsidies to the oil and gas sector and requires remaining subsidies to be contingent on meeting set greenhouse gas emissions targets. Recommendation number 6 was we urge parliamentarians to expand and develop programs that incentivize the creation of sustainable, decent jobs that include living wages, safe conditions, job protections, and benefits in all territories and provinces. So when writing all these recommendations, and I think especially these 2 that I highlighted, one of the principles that helped shape these recommendations was that of systems thinking. As a kind of quick summary, systems thinking means that we acknowledge the historical and ongoing structures that have, created the current crisis that we're in, and recognize and act on all of the systems and sectors that are affected by both the crises and our proposed solutions. So where do we go from here? What do we want parliamentarians to do? What do we want, journalists like you to do? Share the word, get this report out there. But for parliamentarians, we want them to take action and recognize what this report means. We hope that when parliamentarians read our report, they can remind themselves of the effects that their decisions will have in the very long term, beyond electoral cycles for the next 7 generations. As Stephanie and Senator Coyle explained, the process of putting together this assembly, this report, the recommendations ensured that this was a process of diversity, deliberation, and consensus, meaning that this report truly represents youth, the next generation, from all of Canada. Obviously, we want all our reports to be, passed as a bill by the end of the day, but at the very least, we want parliamentarians to understand that this report is what young Canadians want for this country, the direction that we want Canada to go in. This is our thoughts and opinions. This is what we want, and parliamentarians cannot represent us without at least acknowledging, accepting, and acting on that fact. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, especially to the 3 members of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly. Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmin Kay. I'm a director with MASS LBP, led by people. MASS has been around for more than 17 years, and its mission is to strengthen democracy by inviting people into conversations about policies that shape their lives. We've built a practice around designing and hosting citizens' assemblies. Citizens' assemblies are long-form deliberative processes that bring together a randomly selected, representative group of everyday people to tackle complex public issues. Participants learn from subject matter experts and one another, engaging in dialogue that fosters mutual understanding and helps them find common ground. The goal is to develop consensus-based recommendations for public bodies. Citizens' assemblies are especially well suited to addressing contentious or wicked problems that demand values-driven discussion and decision-making. So the work of this assembly, as you've heard, was guided by the question of what do young Canadians want Parliament to do to meet Canada's climate commitments in ways that reflect their values and priorities. The members of the assembly were selected through a civic lottery from a pool of more than 700 young people, all aged 18 to 25, who put up their hand to volunteer for the opportunity. A civic lottery is a sortition-based recruitment method that selects people in a fair and representative way. Characteristics of a civic lottery include random invitation, voluntary response, and a representative selection. The goal of the lottery is to ensure that ordinary people, not just the most vocal, not the most politically engaged, have an equal chance to participate in these processes. The 33 members of the Canadian Youth Climate Assembly started as strangers in early August, and today released its report that contains 23 recommendations. As you heard, this is the first Citizens' Assembly on climate change in Canada, and one of the first in the world for this age group. It joins a body of more than 170 climate assemblies around the world. Some of these assemblies have helped break political deadlocks on climate action, have promoted a more aware and politically confident citizenry, and have helped increase the legitimacy and public acceptance of social action on climate change. Assembly members are asked to step into the room and consider not just their own perspective or their own needs, but also those of their family members, their colleagues, friends, and neighbors. They're asked to consider what would serve the greater public interest, and more often than not, this is where they find what's shared and common between them. So an assembly isn't about opinions and partisan politics. It is a process that seeks to build empathy and understanding between people, to build bridges rather than to burn them. Assemblies build trust among its members, but also between members and policymakers, or whomever the commissioning body is. Members come to better understand the position and different considerations that policymakers hold, and policymakers come to understand that the public can be trusted and is capable of delivering cogent, useful advice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jasmin, and also the youth and Senator Coyle. This project, of course, would not be possible without the support of the Roberg Foundation, Trottier Family Foundation, and also Catherine Donnelly Foundation. So I thought maybe I can start off with that. My name is Leticia Deawuo, and I am the Executive Director of Environmental Leadership Canada. You know, our aim, I was going to use the word very simple, but maybe not so simple, but our aim is really to build a new generation of leaders to tackle climate, the issues that we have around climate, and also to boost the capacity of everyday Canadians. And there are multiple ways we do that. One of the ways is through our internship program. So we have the municipal internship program, and we also have the parliamentary internship program as well. And we do a number of events, panels, speaking engagements, as well as another way of sort of tackling some of these issues together. It's been a real privilege and an honor, to be quite honest with you, to witness you young folks take on the leadership of this work and really come together with some incredible recommendations that I think, you know, as Senator Mary Coyle said, we're happy to sort of take that charge with you together and to look at how you know, we can push our parliamentarians. And I love what you said around, you know, we wish the bill could be passed today, of course, right now, if that was possible. But we know that the work ahead is quite long, and we are excited and honored to really be working with you on this work, and also honored to be working with MASS as well. You know, the the assembly itself is something that is fairly new to us, but is always a process that was really, really important for this climate assembly, and we're just really honored to be a part of this work. So we look forward to continue on this work. The report is out. We hope that everyone will get a chance to review the report and to engage with this report in ways that they see fit within their own communities as well. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
So usually this is the time when reporters ask questions. Since there's no one in the room and no one online, this marks the end of the press conference.
Right.
So I would like to thank you, Senator Cole, everyone. Thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We did it.